Xavier here. Welcome back to the Xavier Builds podcast. Today's guest is someone leading the charge when it comes to smarter, healthier, more sustainable homes. Not just through design, but through science. Jenny Edwards is the director of Lighthouse Architecture and Science, and today we are talking about how data, testing, and real-world performance are shaping the homes of the future right here in Canberra. Jenny, really good to have you. Thanks for being with me.
Great to be here, Zay. Thanks.
Now let's jump straight into it. Tell us about your story.
Well, I have to say that I'm the most accidental and misrepresented in terms of being called an architect and doing architecture because I'm a scientist. So my background is science. I did a science degree. I've got no qualifications in architecture. But I've always had a passionate interest in housing, and I nearly did architecture at uni. But it's only in recent years that I've really reflected on the fact that I've lived in 28 different homes throughout my life. Yeah, my parents moved around quite a bit. We weren't in the defences or anything, but mum was a school teacher, dad worked ground crew for Ansett. But I had this early exposure to architecture because my dad had gone to school with an architect, and we moved to Tasmania when I was young, and he decided to get this friend who was an architect to design a house for us. And, you know, middle income, not your typical architecture client. So designed and built a house that was really quite sustainable for its time in the early 80s. But, of course, I was just a 10-year-old kid. I had no clue, but I got to live in this really interesting and comfortable home. And then we did it again in my teens. So I got to witness that in a bit more detail that time. I used to go along to the architecture meetings with my dad and watch, and found the whole process really fascinating, and then watched the construction as well. So I think all of that was percolating for a long time, because it wasn't until 2008, when I was 36, that I actually made the career change from science into this housing industry. Yeah.
So you've been, I guess, you've been exposed to it at a very young age.
Yeah.
And you would have seen the difference between a well-designed home to potentially not a well-designed home.
Totally. And this is in southern Tasmania. So I used to live in these houses. I said, well, you know, unusual for their time, but it was just my home. You know, I just thought of it as my home. Then I'd go and stay at my friends' houses, which were, you know, classic older weatherboard houses in
Single
Hobart.
glaze.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know, leaky as. And got to experience that contrast in comfort. And at that time, I didn't think about the difference in health, the health impacts. But in later years, that's become a big focus for me. It's not just about the energy efficiency, it's about the comfort and health impacts.
Well, I've spoken to a couple of different people about this, right? And I'm a firm believer of, if you're in a positive space, that is, you come home and it's easy on the eyes, well designed, you know, you're not worried about it's cold, it's hot. You know, totally. I think that puts you in a different mindset. Absolutely.
Profound impacts on your physical and mental health, you know, and your home is your biggest single investment. It's the place where you spend the most time with the people that you care the most about. We really should be designing them well and thinking about them very, very carefully, because it does have a huge impact on us.
It's almost like a subconscious impact, though, or like it's not. You know, how am I trying to say this?
Yeah.
Like, you know when you're in a positive environment, you know when you're in a negative environment.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And I think there's a reason why people living in classic Australian houses really love to escape to a small cabin at times, you know, or a nice cabin by the beach. Clearly the setting's really nice as well. But those smaller spaces are often designed to be really functional, and you're not heating and cooling a big space, and there's much less stress. So, yes, we need to think about our homes in all sorts of ways. I'm already hinting at size there. Yeah. We'll get to that later, though. But yes, please, everyone, you know, put your own energy into improving your own home for your own health.
And we're going to get into some of those things a little bit later. But before we do, what drew you into it? So you said at 36 you had a bit of a change of heart and you wanted to jump in. What was the catalyst there?
Well, it's quite a story. I had actually been asked to join the federal government innovation policy section in 2007, I think it was, to help shape Australian science and research. And I was so excited because my background is science research and science education and communication. I thought, here's my chance to help make Australia more innovative and commercialise more of our great research. And after a year of doing that, I desperately needed to get out because I realised that innovation policy was the least innovative area you could work in. It felt like to me at that time. And meanwhile, I had moved back to Canberra into a house that had great orientation. I'd chosen it for all the right reasons, but it was bloody freezing and I was suffering from asthma. My kids were suffering, too hot over summer, too cold over winter. And I thought there's got to be I know there's a better way of doing housing. I looked into stuff. I had a friend my cousin actually in the HVAC industry who just started using thermal cameras. Our friend Lish Fayer, who's a local journalist, had just done a TV show called Carbon Cops where she used a blower door, so air leakage testing. So I watched that on TV. I knew about thermal cameras. I watched the blower door and I thought, here's enormous potential to test existing houses but also to educate people because I had done a master's in science communication. So I was big on hands-on teaching and educating. And I thought these tools not only allow me to collect data, but allow me to communicate how we can improve housing. So I look back now, I think, you mad woman, but I resigned. My first ever secure job, I resigned, went and bought a thermal camera, which you had to get imported from the US illegally. That's another story. Went to New Zealand to get a blower door because you couldn't get them in Australia back then, and trained in energy efficiency modelling as well, commercial and residential, and just threw myself in the deep end.
That's the best way to do it.
Totally. And you learn fast, sink or swim. So I started collecting data on existing houses. So that was a very long answer. I'm not even sure where we started.
It's sort of just what drew you into it, really.
Yeah. So, living in a really crappy house, living in a really, really poor house, but also trying to influence Australian industry to make more industry more innovative from a government perspective. I realised, wait on, this isn't working. There's a huge gap. Pardon the pun, but there were lots of gaps. And I thought there's an opportunity to fill that gap. So my first business was actually called Energy Imaging because we were imaging with a thermal camera and the blower door.
For those people that don't understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, what am I talking about?
Yeah. Can you explain what a blower door is, why a thermal imaging camera is important?
Yes.
What leakage is?
Absolutely. Back to basics. Houses leak heat. That's the thing we think about most of all in Canberra is our winter energy use because it's most of our energy use. So the warmth leaking out, it leaks out through gaps and cracks, so directly out, but it also leaks out through the walls and the ceiling and the roof through, we call that convective loss. So there's two important things, air leakage and insulation. So they're the two keys to a really high performance home. So a thermal camera allows you to visualise gaps in the insulation, which is independent of air leakage. The blower door is a tool that allows you to assess how leaky a building is.
Air changes,
Air changes, yeah.
That's the
Air
one.
changes per hour, air changes per square metre of surface area. So those two things, so the thermal camera and the blower door together allow us to visualise not only the gaps in the insulation but the air leakage in a house. And they're really unsexy to talk about. You know, people would much rather talk about double glazing and PV systems. But I tell you, it's the insulation and it's the air leakage that are the biggest bang for buck and will have that profound impact on your health and comfort.
And when we talk energy efficiency ratings,
Yep.
these are the first things we need to be thinking about, right?
Totally, although the energy efficiency rating doesn't really factor in the air leakage,
yes.
which is something I've been talking about for years. But it's coming and it has the ability to, and we're all much more aware of air leakage now because of passive house system, some of your audience will have heard of, which is not what I do, I should say. We can come to that later too. But insulation, it's a key thing. And we've actually had that right for a long time in Australia. The National Construction Code insulation standards have actually been really good for quite a long time. There are quite a few people who seem to suggest that we should be insulating to much higher levels. I really contest that because there are diminishing returns. One of the bigger problems we see in Australia is that people install the insulation but they're not doing it well. So it's the
little
gaps.
gaps.
Yeah, the gaps in the
You see
insulation.
that on the block.
You do a lot.
You got a gap there.
Yeah, I see that in houses.
Yeah, so you get the thermal imaging camera, you look at the walls and the roof and the ceiling,
Yep.
and you will see in there little gaps.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
or whopping great big
Or
gaps.
whopping great big
Xavier.
gaps,
I have seen the classics where there's a whole bag of bats up there that hasn't been unpacked.
Just laying in the
Just
roof.
laying in the roof.
plastic, ready to go.
Yep. Got some great images of that. So yeah, we can visualise those gaps in the insulation, and it only takes 5% gaps in R5 ceiling insulation, which is what we should have in Canberra homes, to reduce the effective R value by half. So you're paying for R5 bats, you want them installed well, otherwise you'd be getting R2.5 or less. So the heat transfer is doubled if you reduce the R value by half. So huge difference.
Very, very important, the insulation.
Yeah, just not so sexy.
No,
to talk.
it's not. Well, you don't see it,
right.
but you feel it.
Exactly.
I think is the
Yeah.
thing. So that's been really, obviously that's a really important part, and we're talking about fundamentals. And how does that tie into your business now and what you do now?
Cool. Well, actually, I'm going to introduce a third thing there, which is really the key.
Yep.
So, because that was all science I'm talking about.
Yep.
But the design is the other key thing, and the really big thing I want to stress to people is that designing for your site and for your local climate is really, really critical. And it doesn't have to involve an architect. There are lots of building designers and there are lots of builders that give it a crack too. But designing to make the most of the orientation, so soaking up the free northern sun over winter and making sure you shade it in summer. It really is as simple as that. So solar passive design. If you get that right, that's the thing that has the biggest impact on your star rating. And that's free if you do it early in the design process. The problem these days is that a lot of people take something off the plan and plonk it on their block, and they might scrape through to the minimum, which is now 7 stars, which is harder. But if they had looked earlier and if they'd thought about their block and its orientation and looked at other design options, that you can get 7.5, 8 stars quite easily in our climate. And 8 stars to 7 stars is a 30% difference. So an 8-star house requires 30% less energy. You really notice it. So air leakage, insulation, the less sexy things, so critical. But number 3 is combining that, and that's what my business did or does, Lighthouse, combining that with the design, which is thinking really early from the concept stage about making the most of the orientation and your particular site.
Yeah. So, and just to go back on those fundamentals, when we talk about solar passive, what we mean is harnessing the warmth from the sun, right?
Yeah.
To warm up your house so that you don't have to flick the heater on and burn energy unnecessarily.
Totally. Yeah.
So saving costs there in the design of your home, so that you're not spending all this money on your energy bills and
Absolutely.
your house is heated from the sun.
Totally, that's right. And a lot of people these days aren't aware that in winter the sun gets down to an angle of just 32 degrees in the sky. So it means that if your house faces north, the sun penetrates in by metres into your home to heat it up. But throughout the year, by summer solstice, the sun is up at 78 degrees. So a simple eave over your northern windows completely shades that glass. So that's the critical thing, is soaking up the winter sun, but also shading in summer, particularly in a heating climate, which we all live in.
Yeah, Canberra's uniquely placed in that we're really cold in the winter.
Totally.
And then really get really warm in the summer too.
Totally. And that's why my business model worked here, because we are the perfect climate for solar passive design. There are very few climates in Australia that go from -8 through to 44 degrees and experience that huge range. And we're so lucky that we get so much sunshine here compared to Melbourne and Hobart. And, we're very, very sunny climate, so we really should be making the most of that.
I was just about to ask you about Melbourne and Hobart. And, do you think they're more advanced than us in this space?
Yes and no. So I do quite a bit of work, or have done a lot of collaborative work with people in Melbourne. There's some real leaders in Melbourne for sure, particularly in the multi-res space and sustainability. They're way ahead. Single res, there's more. Again, compared to our population, I think we're doing pretty well. Hobart it's got a long way to go. Their existing housing stock in particular is starting from a really poor base. but I grew up there. Yeah. So no, Canberra's doing pretty well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah,
That's good. Because I see like on social media, obviously, you see Melbourne just,
Totally.
They've got all the cool guys down there doing all the cool stuff.
There's a lot more people more active on social media, I think, which gives that appearance. Whereas I know some great people here in Canberra, but they don't have a social media presence. And I think that gives a bit of a false appearance that we're not.
I feel like in years to come, like I know that it's popular now, but I feel like the reason it's been so popular on social media is because people want to know about it.
Yeah.
They don't understand these practices and they want to, they're thirsty for knowledge, if you want to call it that. And they probably don't know where to start, with this design and because there's so many different products. Like it's almost like another division of construction.
Totally. I know. I totally understand how people get completely bamboozled. I was one of the early admins of a group called My Efficient Electric Home, which just started out with 3,000 members and is now at 160,000 members. And they're all people just desperate to know about how to improve their home. So there's an appetite, absolutely, amongst the public. But then in the industry, there is also an appetite, and there's been this huge void in education. And then along came Passive House. So I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with Passive House in that they're a great, it's a great product and a great marketing machine. Talking about two of my favourite things, insulation and air leakage is a lot of their focus.
Is this the extra sauna and the building wraps? And
Yeah, but I've been using those for 11 years, well before Passive House. So that's my point, that Passive House came along and they've done a wonderful job of educating a lot of the industry, but they gave the impression that building science didn't exist before Passive House, whereas all of those principles exist outside of Passive House. And it's basically what I've been doing since 2008. And it's not me having a chip on my shoulder. What I want to stress is that those things are accessible to other members of the industry without doing a Passive House course, and to members of the public without getting a Passive House accredited project. Do that if you want to, absolutely, but it is more expensive. So
to go down that path.
Totally, right? It is more expensive because the Lighthouse method is, we're very focused on cost effectiveness. It has to deliver bang for buck. So that's why I don't do excess insulation and I don't go to extreme levels of airtightness. Because if we want to have mainstream impact, which is absolutely what I want to do, it has to be affordable. If it's not affordable, it's not sustainable. And we know affordability is a huge issue.
I was just about to mention that.
Yeah.
Usually when you talk about energy efficiency, you start to talk money and it can get quite expensive quite quickly, but it seems like you're working towards it needs to be accessible for everyone.
Yep.
And doing a little bit is better than doing nothing because you can improve your home with a few little tweaks.
Yep.
By a good percentage, which is better than doing nothing at all. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So totally. I want to stress to people that you can have significant impact. But the number one thing is to think about it early. Don't fall in love with the design. Don't commit to a project and then go and get your energy assessment or go and get your EER certificate and go, I have to add all of these things to make it comply, because if you'd sought some advice, and I know it's hard to get that advice because people are bamboozled and there aren't lots of people like me in my business out there. So, but there are quite a few accredited energy assessors in Canberra and across the country. Do a bit of research, seek them out, get some of that early input. It may cost you a few hundred, a few thousand, but I guarantee you it will save you thousands in the running of the house, but also save you in the building of the house, because we introduce ideas about tweaking orientation and maybe reducing the size, because these days, if people are serious about sustainability, then size is the number one. So I think that's a big thing that we've done at Lighthouse, is we've always challenged people about what do they really need and shown them through good design, smaller spaces can feel and function like larger spaces. They cost you less to build and they cost you a lot less to run. So that's one of my regular rants. Size.
I always used to say this to my old man. I was like, well, do you want to buy a bigger house? He's like, nah, I don't want to have to heat that. It's too big.
Totally.
Imagine the heating cost on it.
Totally.
So, yeah. He was always thinking about that.
Well, I call it the great forgetting, that I do think our parents, and particularly our grandparents, were much more aware of the position of the sun and all of those sensible things to stay comfortable and save energy. You know, our sort of generation have gone through, or maybe your generation, I'm a bit older, we've gone through that boom where energy was cheap and things were cheap and houses got bigger and bigger and, you know, things did get more efficient and we just weren't thinking about it. And now a lot of people are rattling around in great big homes that are costing a lot to heat and cool, but also are not sustaining them in a, you know, they don't feel nice. Great big empty voids don't support you emotionally either. You know, it's about your physical and your mental health. So anyway, size. I really encourage people. Smaller houses can feel fantastic. So that's really sort of become my number one message these days. And you'll see, I'll keep introducing it at any opportunity.
Use what you need.
Yeah.
Use what you need.
Yeah.
What keeps you in it? Why are you so passionate about this? And why are you like talking to you for the first time? You love it.
I do love it. It has nearly killed me twice, but what keeps me in it these days? I've got 3 adult kids, and in all seriousness, I worry about where they're going to live, and are they going to be able to live somewhere that is healthy and going to be good for them, you know. And I've lived in my share of diabolical rentals, so have they. Will they ever be able to enter the housing market? It's a really important question. So I've actually been asking my peers and members in the industry for about 5 or 6 years now, where will your kids live? I seriously want you to think about that. And that's not just about the housing supply shortage. It's about retrofitting our existing housing stock, because it isn't going to do us well as the climate changes and things progress.
That's a beast in itself, retrofitting the existing.
Exactly. And that's actually my major passion. And that's how I started in this whole industry. It really was all about retrofitting existing housing stock. It was quite accidental that I ended up, you know, Lighthouse was Canberra's largest residential architecture practice. We're winding back now, but it wasn't intentional. So I did team up with an architect, I missed that part of the story, architect and builder who were Jigsaw Housing. So I was one of the early directors. I was initially just a colleague or collaborator with Jigsaw Housing. So Tom Henderson, who you've had on.
Love Tom.
Yeah, and Andrew Berry, who's the architect, had teamed up and had designed a small smart house in Franklin, and they contacted me to do the energy modelling on it. And I remember opening up the plans and going, oh my God, this is different to anything else. I was working with lots of different builders and architects at that time. Thought, gee, this looks good. Modelled it up and went, wow, there's not actually much for me to recommend to improve this. I made the few recommendations. They took it really well. And then next thing, they asked me to come and physically test the building envelope. And there's really no incentive for a builder to get me to come in and test the building envelope at the end of construction, because I'm only going to potentially find problems that they could just pretend weren't there. So I went along, did an air leakage test, took the thermal camera, and again was really surprised about how well insulated and well sealed it was. And of course, Tom had done his training in Denmark, so he'd had a different sort of education on that front, and it really showed. So I started collaborating with them, and that's how the merging with architecture and construction really happened for me. And immediately, again, I could see that there was this big gap, that architecture and construction weren't really talking to each other, and we needed to help that, and people weren't communicating this stuff to the public more broadly. So, that's really where it all snowballed from.
I think inherently the builders want to work with the architects, but sometimes they see these designs and they're like,
and I understand.
Yeah, great in theory, mate. But where am I going to fix this off to? How am I going to connect that?
Exactly.
You know. Yeah. So I can see that. Whereas we've spoken to a couple of different really good architects, and their thing is that they want to be more collaborative with construction, you know, with the builder. And that's, I think, good for the industry. And I think
totally
communication around building better is always good for good for the building industry.
Totally, yeah.
And if architects and builders can work a little bit more alongside each other and be trusted a bit more by the client, then the final finish is probably going to be
much better.
Much better.
And again, do that. I encourage architects to talk to builders again earlier in the design process, because they do bring ideas about feasibility and constructability and cost impacts. And that was one of the lovely things about when we did evolve from jigsaw housing and sort of go our separate ways, the three of us. Lighthouse then works with a range of different builders. You know, we go out to tender, but we love having those discussions with the builders. So when I say we, I had a team of 11 architects, or a design team of 11. We would always get the builders' ideas and input, and it's so important. We're not telling them what to do. We're saying, here's our idea. We really value your feedback. If you can see a better way to achieve this, then let's chat. So we learned a lot.
It's got to be a
builders.
team game. Got to be a team game, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To win for your client, you've got to be on the same page, builder, architect, and the guys on site, obviously.
Totally. Yeah.
With the construction.
Yeah.
Now, getting into what's broken and what's wrong.
Oh, yeah.
The way we're designing homes at the moment, I think can be better. I think we're not taking into account some of these things you're talking about. We mentioned just before we jumped on here about some interesting discussion on social media around some designs that, you know, look great,
yes,
but maybe don't function as well as they should.
Yeah. So look, again, Australia's had this. Our house sizes, here I go again, have grown enormously, and because our energy efficiency standards have been relatively low, we've been able to do what we all sort of tend to coin the McMansion. And the other big problem in Australia is that's all we see. So a display village is full of those examples, because we're not a culture that really, or certainly architecture, don't appreciate architecture. And that's, I'm not blaming the construction industry. I also blame architects for that, for being really poor at communicating what they bring. But only 3 to 5% of houses even involve an architect. Anyway, you go to a display village, they tend to all be kind of the same, great big houses, and people immediately, their aspirations are set. That's what I need. That's what I'm aspiring to, is this great big house with a theatre room and a big void, and without being aware of the incredible cost that is to heat and cool and to maintain, you know, over the life of the building. So where have we gone wrong?
Well,
there?
yeah. What do you what do you say we should be looking at doing better?
We should be doing more examples of good stuff, and this has increased. So over the last 15 years since I've been in this industry, Sustainable House Day, it's an annual event where people open up their homes. The Suburban Land Agency does more open homes, and they're doing some interesting things in North Right, where they're demonstrating higher performance, smaller footprint homes. We have to have examples that people can walk through and experience. And
experience is the key word there.
Totally, experience
is
absolutely the key. And that, again, was one of the powers in Lighthouse sort of pre-COVID, when things were easy. We had open homes regularly. Our clients loved their projects and were really proud and happy to show them to other people. And we would have people through regularly, because the first obstacle to overcome is, God, she keeps talking about size. She keeps telling me I have to have a smaller house. It must feel like a bloody shoebox. And then people would come along and see that these smaller houses, cleverly designed to soak up the sun and the natural light and to not waste any space and to have lots of excellent storage, feel like much larger homes. So people would often argue with us to say, it can't be 120 square metres, or it's not 150 square metres, this is 200 square metres. Like, no, it really isn't. It's got the same number of functional rooms. They all just work really well. Some of the houses down the road do the same number of rooms, but in 220 or 240 square metres. Do you need that extra 60 square metres when it's just space to heat and cool? So we've got to demonstrate what's possible. We have to keep educating the community, and I do that in a variety of ways, increasingly on social media these days. You know, the science communication and education landscape has changed wildly across my career in this space. You know, social media was not a thing. It was all about your website. And now increasingly we're doing podcasts, and, you know, YouTube is really the space to move to. So and just communicating. So I know there are lots of people in the industry. You've had lots of great guests, but I encourage anyone else in the industry out there listening to start talking. You don't have to leap straight into doing a podcast, but start attending industry events, start collaborating, start communicating. Don't be shy about talking to the media if there's an opportunity. They're not out to get you, and they will misquote you. It always happens, but, give it a go.
I think we all need to get more involved.
Totally.
I think we need to be telling people the story of what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve.
Yep.
Because, I think that's now a really important part of running your business.
Yep.
Is showing people what you're about, showing people what you're trying to achieve.
Totally, because there's, in a town like Canberra, well, anywhere, there's this misconception that people in business are just in it for themselves and they're out to rip us off, and then there's this other misconception in Canberra that we're in this town with loads of public servants who've got oodles of money, so business is easy because you've got all these clients that are rolling around in dosh. Neither of those things are true, You know full well that the majority of small business owners are just people trying to do a good job, to earn a sustainable income, to deliver a quality product. And they care deeply about their clients and about their staff.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And we are people, and I've got a family, you've got a family.
Yep.
And, we just want to do a good job and move on to the next one.
Totally.
I think that we're marred too much by the small percentage of people that keep going on to a current affair.
Yep.
And, tarring the construction industry with a bad name.
Yeah.
And, it's that I've nearly mentioned it on every podcast, bad news travels around the world before good news gets out of bed.
Absolutely, for sure.
So I think definitely,
Yeah, we've got to tell those good news stories, and that's what social media allows us to do, is to tell the stories, and that's what I do all of our social media content, and I always try to tell a story. It's not about this design feature and blah 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 blah. It's about, what does this mean? How does this work? How does this affect you?
What I like about your social media is that you're opening dialogue and you're discussing things.
Yeah.
And, there's always going to be the people there that want the big house, that want exactly model, massive, and the McMansion. And that's fine, right? We're not saying you shouldn't have that. But we're saying for everyone to have a bit more of a conscious thought around what they're looking to build and I guess what they're getting into.
Totally. And we're having that impact. I have that discussion with my team, in that my science team, everyone used to look at the architecture team and look at the houses, the new houses and the renovations we're doing. But in the background, my science team's been there working with other architects and with other builders, and we're often working on some of those big houses. And, we're not going to it's not our job to convince them to change the design. Our job in that instance is to help them improve the energy efficiency. And isn't it great? They've actually sought that out, So I might not agree with the size of their home, but they're still trying to do it better. So
can I tell you why I like a smaller home? Because it's got room for a pool, it's got room for a big deck of pergola,
Exactly.
It's got room for a lovely landscape.
Totally.
I think people need to get outside a little bit more, is my take.
Totally, and that's a big part of our take too. We would always say that's less house, more landscape. And your landscape, again, talking about physical and mental health.
Correct.
Nothing better than outdoor space. I agree wholeheartedly. And that was a big thing for Lighthouse, that a lot of our projects would have 2 or 3 outdoor spaces. My little house, I'll call it a little house, but it was 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 150 square metre on a 405 square metre block. Had a big northern deck, had a large courtyard to the west, which was beautifully shaded, and then a rear outdoor area as well. No big classic backyard, but beautiful spaces that all members of the household could retreat to separate outdoor spaces.
You could take in the sun, take in the afternoon.
Yep.
I love nothing more than going outside, putting a fire on Sunday afternoon, sitting out there with my kids.
Great.
Marshmallows. That's fantastic.
Totally. Those social outdoor spaces are critical, and critical to our communities too, that we see each other out. We all know what it can be like in the new suburbs now, that you don't see people.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the way that things are going is obviously the blocks are being smaller, which annoys me.
Yep.
They're more expensive, which annoys me again.
Mm-hmm.
But having a smaller home on that and utilising that outdoor area a bit more, I think is going to be a smarter. Let's use the space to its maximum potential.
Absolutely.
I think, yes, you can have a theatre room. Yes, you can have all these things and they're great. But what's going to benefit you the most?
That's
Are you
right.
watching a movie every single night in that theatre room? Yes or no?
Yep.
You know, that's
Totally.
sort of
That's the true compromise. Yes,
yeah.
you can have that, but you are sacrificing that outdoor space.
If you said to me, here's a theatre room or here's a pool and an outdoor area, I'm taking the outdoor area.
Absolutely, and that's my strong recommendation to people. Absolutely.
Now, we've just had the NCC be updated. We talked about 7-star energy rating.
Yeah.
Can you tell me your thoughts on that? Do you think it's gone far enough?
I think 7-star for new builds. Excuse me, I'm just going to cough. I think 7-star for new builds is on the money. We certainly can be doing that.
Right?
Yep, achievable. Again, lovely sunny climate. The one thing I did some social media about this when it was first about to come in is that I think the leap from 6 to 7 stars is the thing that will stop, will make builders and designers stop and start to think about using orientation, and that's critical. And so there's some initial headaches while people have wanted to keep using their existing plans that didn't consider orientation or their site. But now if people pause to do that, piece of cake, it's really not hard. You know, we can achieve 8 stars really quite easily in this climate. When it comes to applying it to renovations, whole other kettle of fish. And I actually advise the ACT government not to go there because it is really complicated to when you renovate and extend an existing house. It certainly can be done, and we have done it many times at Lighthouse, but it's not cheap and it is much more complex. And it is making it incredibly hard for people. And so I think that's a bit of I think it should have been an aspiration, not a regulation. So I think that was a bit of a mistake.
So what you're talking about there is if you've got a existing home and you're going to put an extension on it or put a second story on it, what you need to do now is bring that home up to 7-star energy rating.
Yes.
Where that becomes a challenge is if this is a slab on ground, if there's not the ability to insulate underneath the floor.
Yep.
The walls, more often than not, in the older homes are not insulated at all.
Yeah, which is a relatively easy fix.
That one's not too bad. But the windows, you're generally going to have to pull all the windows out and start again there.
Totally. And you can't pick up the house and move it, you know. A new build, you can use the orientation. With an existing home, you're stuck with what you've got. So it's unrealistic standard, I think.
Well, you're just going to have to throw a lot of money at it to bring it up to the 7-star standard.
Yes.
Do you think that's hurting the ability for people to extend and renovate and update their home?
Yes, we get calls with people struggling, unable to do it. We used to get calls beforehand when it was 6 stars, which was why my advice was don't go to 7. You're going to make it really hard. And we should be encouraging, well, I guess it only is triggered when the extension is more than 50% of the existing floor area. So I guess one positive out of that, and might encourage people to do smaller extensions, which is what, again, I would always stress. We tend to, again, with good design, you can extend by a smaller amount to get some really great improvement. But it's a complicated one, and it's much harder than the government seemed to realise. But there was this a big industry push from different angles that didn't seem to want to listen to the expertise of the people. And there's only a small group of us in that energy efficiency space, but our voices weren't heard.
I think it sounds good, 7-star, you know?
Yeah.
7-star.
Yeah.
And I think that's my take on it is probably they've just gone, let's just put it across everything.
Across the board and see what happens. And I guess...
I wish with things like that, they were just a little bit more logical and realistic in terms of, hey, look, we tried, we're at 6.2 or at 6.8.
Yep.
Is that all right? You know? And then they can go, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. And I think, I keep hoping that there are people within planning who are making those sort of educated assessments, but we see evidence often that they are not. But my team will end up writing letters explaining why for this house, you know, they are genuinely doing the best they can. They have tried really hard. You know, we're all for going for higher star, but for these reasons it can't. And sometimes that will do the trick. But there has been this tendency, we all know, planning is under-resourced and there aren't necessarily people in there who have got time to reflect and think or have the background to assess these things properly. A big issue.
I do feel sorry for the people that are in there.
Yeah.
I feel that they've got...
nightmare.
Yeah, I feel like they're put into a rigid box and they can only do what they can do.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Like they don't. There's no grey that they can work in. It's black or it's white.
No.
It's yes or it's no.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Would not be fun.
No, and every interaction I've had with We could go down an approvals path here.
We could.
I try and avoid it every time. But
Yep.
I want to reach out to the people that are working at ACPA, or
Yes.
I think it's called CED now.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Is it CED?
Yes.
And say that we do appreciate the stuff you're doing. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to I don't think anyone in the industry is coming for you individually. I think
No.
we're just saying that we can do this better, right?
Yeah, definitely. It needs to be done better. So I think we're in total agreement there because it is, as we all know, is really hurting the industry.
Definitely. I think it's taking a bit of confidence out of construction and people that, maybe wanted to extend, renovate or build a new home. They're now thinking that it's really overwhelming and, hey, I just don't want to take the chance on it. I'll just stay where I am or I'll put my money into something else or, which is disappointing, I think.
It is hugely disappointing for the industry. From the sustainability perspective, maybe the outcomes of that are okay. Less people are, I don't know. But it certainly, we can't sustain and grow an industry in this current environment with approvals is way too hard. And that's a big reason that I am winding back. Because what I didn't say at the start is that I'm no longer Lighthouse Architecture and Science. I'm now Lighthouse Archiscience. I'm not actually allowed to use the word architecture anymore because I don't have a registered architect on the staff. Because
Archiscience.
Archiscience. But the reason I've basically stopped doing architecture and certainly no new builds or no major renovations to focus on the retrofit and thermal upgrades is because it is costing too much. The design process, it just was no longer feasible for my business model stopped working because of the length of time in approvals.
And that's disappointing.
Really disappointing, hugely disappointing. We were the highest profile business in this space and it just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. I think that's a real shame, that. And I called this stuff out at the start of the year. And again, I don't want this whole podcast to be about building approvals, but I've heard this story before, unfortunately, and I've heard of people just leaving Canberra because they just don't want to deal with it anymore. Yeah, and nothing has improved. Thus far.
So
But sorry,
yes,
Jenny, we want to talk about hope.
Great.
This is about positivity.
Totally, absolutely.
What gives you hope for the future?
Look.
Are there any signs of progress?
Oh, definitely. So I do want to highlight that, I have been in this game, sustainable housing, since 2008. I have seen dramatic improvement. Teings have really changed. Back then, the number of, 7-star houses you might see or anyone doing anything above 6 stars was teeny weeny. Now, lots of people are, so that's fantastic. And the younger builders I see coming through are just much more in tune with this stuff. Again, there's big gaps in the education system still in their training in terms of sustainability. I think that needs to be amped up, but they're just much more naturally aware. They've grown up in a different world and a different environment. Some of them are really driven by the environmental side of things and they're genuinely concerned about that side of things. So that gives me huge hope. And there are lots of them out there and they reach out to me on social media and we chat and so there's plenty of good people in the industry trying really hard. So that gives me hope. My own kids give me hope. My son's about to finish his electrical apprenticeship. There's one really good tradie coming up. Plenty of great young motivated people. So don't give up hope, everyone. It's not all doom and gloom. We certainly need to see more women in the industry, and I know you've had Jo on before. A huge fan of Jo's, and I think that's the next big thing. I had an article in The Guardian a few years ago, particularly in the retrofit space. I think there's huge potential for women to help in that area because the people at home are generally women and they are the ones who are suffering at home. Their health's being impacted and the kids' health's being impacted. If we can get women who are retrofit and thermal upgrade specialists in and having that conversation, I think there's enormous potential there. I haven't mentioned Fix It Chicks. I can tell you about that at some point.
Keen to hear about it.
Okay.
But I do think women bring a unique perspective to construction. I think that as well, like in my businesses, the main decision maker is the mother of the home or the
Yeah.
woman of the family
Yep.
who says, I want this finish and I
Yep.
want it to look like this
Yep.
and this is this color and that's that.
That's
You know,
right.
The blokes are sort of not that interested in it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why we need to educate the women about it's not just choosing the colours and the finishes. We want you thinking about the insulation. And again, they pick it up. It's a matter of educating them because they'll start making those decisions too when they know it means their kids will sleep through the night and not get respiratory illnesses every 2 months. Yes, we need to work with women, but also that lovely thing that happens when you've got a mix of genders in a team. So my team at Lighthouse for many of the years was half and half, guys and girls, and that was great. You know, it reflected community and society, and I think we had much more rounded discussions, and it's important. It's important to get more girls out there.
I definitely think it is, and I think it's a underutilized resource for the construction industry.
Totally.
I think we've been the whole part of this podcast for me has been I just think we can do things better.
Yep.
I think that we should be talking about taking our egos out of everything,
Yep.
stepping back and go, if we would design a construction industry from the ground up and it would function perfectly, how do we do that?
Yeah.
You know, we get as many people as we can involved.
Yep.
We put all the right people in the right spaces. We go out to the public or the clients and we communicate clearly, hey, these are all your options. You know, like the car industry, right?
Yeah.
You know, look how far that's come in the
Yep.
past 20 years. We've got electric cars driving around now. I look at home building and extensions and renovations, like why we need to be informing
Totally.
people
The car analogy is
the
great
car analogy,
because,
yeah.
look at the research we do on our cars before we purchase a car, and we're concerned about the efficiency of a car, but do we know that about our homes?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
One of my good friends he's very frugal with his money, right? And he's always like, if I buy this car, you know, it's going to only cost me this much a week. You know, if he did that kind of thing on his home,
yeah.
and the money you'd save over a long period of time by just picking up a couple of different things
It's huge.
will be exponential. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we routinely, just addressing air leakage alone, can reduce winter energy consumption by 30%, 40%, 50%. Our reno retrofits typically see 50 up to 80% reductions in their energy consumption over a year. That's massive. But that excites our clients. But the thing that excites them the most is, oh my God, I can't believe how comfortable the house is. I didn't realise that houses could feel like this. And that's the thing, people don't know because they've always lived in these leaky, crappy houses.
How would you describe that feeling of what a well-designed, comfortable? Because I've been trying to think about.
Yeah, it's a still feeling, still, calm, content. I mean, you walk into our projects and they do have that very different feel. They're not always completely quiet because often they're so comfortable in temperature that you open the doors to the lovely outdoor areas and decks and things, so you're connecting to your landscape. But they do feel happy, you know. They're light-filled, light-footed, and very social because houses are for living in. You know, that's the priority, living healthily. So happy. They do feel happy. That's not at all scientific. But I can tell you there's plenty of data has been collected on houses over the years about how profound the impact. There's a great study out of Sustainability Victoria showing that for every dollar invested in basic retrofit and thermal upgrades reduced the health bill in Victoria by $10.
Really?
So tenfold. You know, this is profound stuff. And, you know, I get messages from people. I did quite a bit of work with low-income households initially, and a single mum with 2 kids with respiratory, you know, illnesses constantly. Going in, doing some basic draft sealing, showing her how to soak up the northern sun to just rearrange the dining and the kids' play area, transformed their health and dropped their energy consumption. But
That's what keeps you motivated, is it?
totally. Honestly, I refer to that particular project.
I can just think of that, how fulfilling that would be.
Huge. That was back in 2011. So I'd already collected quite a bit of data by then on existing homes and seen those dramatic, like 30 and 40% reductions just by addressing air leakage and ceiling insulation. Then when I did it with low-income households and saw those directly profound impacts on people who are really really struggling. And that's the space I actually want to go back to. So my business is really evolving and my career is evolving into going back to helping those vulnerable households who've got, are suffering the most and have got the most to gain from this stuff. So I love you, all you people who can afford to do it, which is an increasingly smaller pool. That's great, but increasingly people can't afford to do this stuff. This is a real tangent now.
Well, the golden ticket for me is really a well-designed home that is affordable, that performs really well, that has a low energy cost, monthly low energy cost. How do we achieve that on an existing home, say in some of these older suburbs? I think that's what the golden ticket is. Right?
Totally. And that's actually, again, Lighthouse is, if you look at our website, we've done 80% of our work for the last few years has been renovations. And, we've won multiple awards for retrofitting existing houses.
You're a finalist just recently, was that right?
We're a finalist in 3 national Green Smart categories. Didn't take home a gong this year, but we did win the overall gong last year.
There you go.
Yeah.
Can't win every year.
No, that's right. And it's great. Honestly, sorry, another tangent. Entering those awards, I encourage people in the industry to enter those awards because they do help you focus what you're communicating and the projects you want to do, and they help lift the bar in the industry. Where am I going with that? So retrofits, it can be done. And when I first came into this industry, there were not examples of that. And so everyone defaulted to knock down rebuild because it is easier with a clean slate. And everyone's told you it's too hard to improve an existing home. I hope most of all that what Lighthouse has demonstrated is that you can massively improve an existing home without selling a kidney and without costing an arm and a leg if you do it strategically with some science-based advice.
Where would someone start?
Air leakage and insulation, and come to an energy assessor. And it doesn't have to be my team.
But I was just going to say, like if someone's going, well, I am thinking about renovating. I am thinking about, I've got a knockdown rebuild quote here, but it's not sitting well with me. Why can't I use what I've got? Like, where do they start? They
would start by coming to someone like me or another trained and licensed energy assessor, quite a few in Canberra and around the country. And an experienced one who's done quite a bit of work with the construction industry is my advice. One that understands cost as well. Not one that just does, on paper and tells you a star rating. You want more than that. Because, for example, we often will, for people, they'll come to us with exactly that problem. I was going to knock down rebuild because I thought that was the right thing, but it's going to cost this much and I'm terrified. But can I do something with my existing home? We can do the energy efficiency rating, so the thermal performance modelling. And this is a really important thing for people to know is that energy efficiency rating, the stars that you see in the newspapers and when houses are sold, uses a really crude old system which was fantastic and innovative 25 years ago, and it's been baked into our legislation, but it's first generation modelling tool, very, very basic. What we use,
we're missing out on a lot of stuff there, right?
Missing out a huge amount of stuff. But we use what is the second generation tool, which is actually third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation, really fantastic tool developed and maintained by CSIRO. And we can model your existing house and tell you how it's performing now, and which usually accords with what people are experiencing. But then we can show you the potential and we can show you that just by focusing on the air leakage or just by upgrading the insulation, you can get a huge jump often in the the star rating, but also show them that potentially if you thought about maybe moving the kitchen from here, because they're thinking about spending some decent money, kitchen from here, making this the main living area because it gets the northern sun, then we can up the star rating again. And so just strategic tweaks. So we typically find that our reno extensions, they're still not cheap if people want to go the whole hog, but they're typically, they used to be 150 grand cheaper. They're now 200 to 250 grand cheaper than the knockdown rebuild. That's a big chunk of money.
Use it in your landscaping.
Yeah, exactly. I honestly say
your pool,
that. Yeah. Because people, we all know, all too well, people run out of money. It all goes on the house and then they live surrounded by bare dirt for years and feel bloody miserable as a result. Get that advice. upfront from people who understand cost. Don't give up on your existing homes. They do have more potential than you realise. And if they don't, we'll tell you, because there are some that don't. And I'm never shy about that.
There are some homes that just can't be helped.
Yeah, there are.
The ugly ducklings.
Yeah,
we'll call
yeah,
those.
they are. Those single block workhouses, for example. Yeah.
We'll change it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, running a purpose-led team, what does that look like for you?
Look, it's been easy really because although I'm in the sort of downsizing phase now, because we were quite unique, and because I came from the science perspective, I wasn't entrenched in the architecture view of the world or the construction view of the world. It was just a fresh and new look at things and just seeing the potential. In terms of attracting a design team, it was easy because all of my staff basically sought us out, because it's like, oh, I want to do what you're doing is different to everyone else. And they all shared that purpose. They were all genuinely interested in sustainability and affordability. They're all young people who can't afford homes. We're all real people. So they were genuinely motivated. It was important to find people that were aligned with our philosophy, but it was easy because there were plenty of them.
It's learning a new skill, I guess.
Yeah.
In that it's a different type of design. It's not just about the look; it's about the functionality.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that's important.
Yeah.
And it's probably maybe what some architects or designers out there maybe need to brush up on or think about a little bit more consciously.
Absolutely. And there's no doubt in every industry and every trade there are people who are less willing to learn, less willing to be open-minded, who think they do know it all. But yeah, architecture, the architecture industry, just as much as the construction industry, needs to up their understanding of sustainability. Do not think that architects are taught this at university. Some of the courses around the country are, but not many of them. So they really come out of architecture with very little exposure to sustainability. So it really at the moment is very much dependent on the client having some understanding and awareness. Again, there are increasingly architects who are switched onto it and increasingly builders, but they don't dominate in either industry.
Do you feel like the government's now finally caught up with how important this is?
Yeah, look, I think the ACT government was always
aware of it.
Always aware of it, yeah. So and the federal government, to be honest. So that I wouldn't have. I look back now at when I resigned from my first secure job to do all of this. I wouldn't have done that if the environment didn't look positive. Like the ACT government was doing some pretty cool stuff. I presented to a climate change thing in 2009 talking about air leakage and thermal imaging, and the federal government was looking at doing, they had the Pink Bat scheme and they had a green loans program, which all went very pear-shaped. I was involved in those as well.
Again, good intentions.
Good intentions that really...
Poor execution.
Yeah, really poor execution, which set the whole industry back by about a decade. It really stuffed things up. So I look back and I'm pleased that I was able to survive that period because so federally the environment was not supportive, but the ACT government continued to be. They were still trying to do things, and while I'm frustrated by many things at times, and I've written my share of letters to ministers, I should say the ACT government just gave me an award, a sustainability award, so thank you, ACT government, for that acknowledgement. I do really appreciate it, and I've had many constructive discussions with them. So, yeah, I'm not actually going to criticise the ACT government in terms of, I think they've done well keeping up. And, they introduced the minimum insulation standards for rental properties, and that was something I've been chatting about for years, about how do we up the performance of rentals, and setting a minimum EER standard for houses is not going to work for a rental property. Ceiling insulation was a good way to go. So long way of saying, saying ACT government, you're doing pretty well. Let's just get approvals working.
Now, Jenny, what is your leadership style?
A very level and collaborative playing field. I'm not shy about making the decision though, so I can be really decisive. But I do love to run a genuinely collaborative team. So it was a pretty flat structure, and anyone. So the hierarchy was very vague. It did exist, but it was very vague in day-to-day operations. we were.
It's more of a collaborative effort, right?
Oh, very collaborative. And every project genuinely had a team of people involved. So, architects and scientists for starters, but also junior staff, a lead designer. And we would have project meetings where every project would get discussed and we'd pick the brains of other designers. Like, oh, I've had that problem too, and I'm looking at this one. And, as I mentioned before, chatting with builders, particularly on renovation projects, sometimes quite early on, we might say, oh, this house is a bit complex and a bit weird. Let's get a builder in to have a chat about the feasibility of this idea we might investigate, or whether they just say, no, that is crazy. So very collaborative.
You talked about that. You talked about having a team working on something.
Yeah.
What were the benefits you saw about having, say, multiple people working on a project as opposed to just one?
The bouncing around of ideas is just so important. But also from a business perspective, if someone on your team gets sick and no one else knows about what's going on with the project, so it was fundamentally a really sensible business thing to do, but it was also great for morale and for team learning, to be encouraging. So at every stage in our design process, and we had 4 stages, there was a collaborating designer. So there was a lead designer and a collaborating designer, and usually a supporting team member. They were expected to have those collab sessions, and often they would get me or another member of the science team involved too. So just making it part of our process was good for everyone, good for productivity, good for...
Team environment's cool. It's fun.
It is. Team environment
it's cool
can be great.
riffing on different ideas.
Absolutely.
And one person might throw something out there,
Yeah.
and 2 of them will gang up on them. No, that's terrible.
Absolutely.
I think it's cool. Like
I love it, and I think in some ways that
it's where the magic happens.
Oh, it is where the magic happens, totally. And I love that. We have an open plan office, and everyone had their headphones for the times when they needed to be in the zone.
We do that, yeah.
Yeah, but I loved sitting in my corner office listening to that interaction, and would often yell out and they go, oh my God, I didn't realise you were listening. But, we would, the incidental stuff as well as the structured stuff is so important. I think we lost a little bit of that after COVID. During COVID...
It seems to have rattled the construction industry, COVID.
Yeah, I think it rattled a lot of industries. And when I reflect on it now, I think, I suddenly had to spend a truck ton of money getting everyone set up to work remotely, and I did. I'm not shy to innovate and get on top of that. So everyone was incredibly well set up to work remotely, which a lot of them had young families. So there were lots of fabulous benefits in that. But I do think once we tried to move back to because I've got a lovely office that does fit 17 staff quite easily. I've never had the 17 staff in the office again since COVID. I
know what you're saying, and I feel like what now after COVID, it's like you need that human to human interaction.
Yeah.
And doing it through a screen is not the same as sitting around a table and saying, here are the plans, and you pull out the pen. Yeah, you could do it on a computer, but it's just not the same.
It's not the same.
You can't get the immediate feedback from the tone of voice, emotion, and work out where someone's at with something or what they're thinking exactly about it.
Yeah.
And it's just way easier to craft ideas when you're in the same room.
Absolutely. So we moved back to our meetings with clients were always in the office face to face. But I think the team magic got a bit lost afterwards, because it was every fortnight on a Monday I had the entire team there, but the rest of the time there was people in and out, which is, look, again, positives for people. But
there's definitely benefits for working at home.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh,
yeah. And I think that COVID taught us that.
Yes.
But it's like we forgot that the office is also a good place, and getting out of your home each day is important for your mental health. And walking into an office and saying, how are you going? How was your weekend? How's this? How's that?
Yeah.
When you're doing that from a screen, it's not really that.
No.
You don't have those little one-on conversations over here with, so-and-so in the office.
Yeah.
And that's what's missing.
Yeah, that magic got reduced a bit. So, but that's not why Lighthouse is downsizing. It's the broader environment.
And now talk to me about some pivotal moments in the journey of business for you.
So I mentioned the one earlier about meeting Andy and Tom and the jigsaw housing thing, which really propelled me into this space, having worked as a sole trader before that. Another pivotal moment was the three of us recognising that, we do have slightly different paths we want to pursue now and working through that. So that was significant. So
was that tough?
It was really tough. It was really tough. It's tough as a personal divorce, and I actually went through both simultaneously, which I don't recommend to anyone. But
sometimes those things are necessary, right?
Oh, absolutely. No regrets. Yeah. No regrets. It was the right thing for all three of us, but working through it is hard. But we came through that. That was a really surprising moment to me, in that I had expected to step away and go back to consulting and just be a sole trader or have a very, very small team. But but what happened was, because I had built this team, and I'm big on team collaboration. Anyway, the staff wanted me to stay. It was very interesting. So that's how I ended up as Lighthouse Architecture and Science, because there was this group of people said, no, we want to do this differently. We want to do this in a collaborative way. So it was a shock to me, and it was a shock to the industry to have the scientist and the woman take over this business called Lighthouse Architecture and Science. And I think there was I was nervous and unsure, and I think a lot of people in the industry thought, who the hell does she think she is? She is not even an architect. It's the attitude from perhaps elements of the architecture industry, and then from construction industry, who the hell does she think she is? Jigsaw Housing's only been successful because of the construction side, as if this will work. So it has been hugely satisfying to me. So that was from 2016 to then build up Lighthouse into...
That would have motivated you, though.
It did. I can't deny it. It motivated me, and it made me nervous at times. Early on, I wasn't sure that I could do it, but hugely satisfying. So then, of course, I've mentioned COVID before. That was a significant thing, and it didn't break my business, but it certainly started an evolution of the business in a less positive way, I think. In the lead up to going into 2020, it was all positive. And then what really caught me out was my health. I wasn't paying enough attention. And I know this is a common thing with small businesses. A lot of good business people spend a lot of time worrying about their clients and their staff and will neglect their own health. So I had a stroke in 2023 and then was diagnosed with breast cancer earlier this year. So it was the stroke, which led to a diagnosis of a vascular disease that we hadn't known about, that made me go, wait on, this is your wake-up call. You can't keep doing this. So it was 18 months ago, following that incident, that I made the decision very publicly that Lighthouse was going to move away from architecture and evolve in this new format. So it was a strategic decision, and it's been a long process of working through that. And then breast cancer was just a bonus, but confirmed for me that I'd made the right decision. So, do look after your health is something I really stress to people out there. Fit your own oxygen mask before assisting others is something I have to remind.
Easier said than done, though, Jenny.
So much easier said than done, Xav. And I know you would have direct experience of that. But you are no good to anyone, your family, your business or your team, unless you look after yourself. So with that, I think my big warning to people in business is don't think continued growth is the answer. If you're successful and things are working, and I think I felt this pressure. We had more demand than we could satisfy, so there were clients out there waiting. But I had a wait list. I was very strict about that. But people kept saying to me, upscale, just do it again, franchise, da-da-da-da-da. But if part of what you deliver is a service and your thing is quality, then if you keep scaling up, you will sacrifice that. And when you scale up, it doesn't mean more money for less stress. It
means more stress for the same money.
Or less money is the shock that some people discover. And that's what basically I discovered, is that, wait on, I'm working even harder now and I'm managing to sustain my staff, but I'm not reaping any benefits other than extra stress. And I was never motivated to make lots and lots of money. And
It's more about helping people, though.
totally, it's about helping people
It seems
and
to me that
having
it
impact.
all links back to that single mum with the 2 kids and you helping her out, and that's been a really important thing where you wanted to carry that on. And the more
Hugely.
people you can help, the better.
Yeah.
The better off we are as a community.
Absolutely, totally. And that community connection, that's another thing I encourage small businesses to do, is that not only did we participate in a lot of community events, and we would speak at events or participate in things like, there are several microforests across Canberra, and there was a composting group, and there's the ACT Conservation Council, and there's other things, and they would...
You sound like the busiest person in history. Are you sure you've slowed down?
I have. I promise you I have. And those things, while I reel off a list, which makes it sound busy, it doesn't actually involve a lot. For organisations like that, a donation of $500 or $1,000, when I could afford that, was huge to those sorts of organisations. And cross-collaboration on social media or turning up to one of their events has a profoundly positive impact for them. It's good for your business, not just in terms of appearances. It feels good. It feels great to connect to and help your community. And that's good for everybody. And it will come round to being good for your business. But I'm not talking about just dollars. I think increasingly in the world, moving forward, connection to community, working locally is going to be really, really important. So don't miss those opportunities to hook up with other organisations in your community.
And you talked about that pivotal moment, just jumping back for a second there. So it took all of that for you to stand back and I guess
Yes.
take a lay of the land. What were you doing before that? Just running around I can just see you like. You just get so caught up in helping people. You forget about, you mentioned about the mask. You forget about, hey, I need to be looking out for myself. And what am I doing for me? But you just forget about that stuff because you're just like, no, I've just got to do this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
And that list just grows exponentially, right?
Totally. I think, yes, the list did. The list often, things got crossed off the list, but I probably added them at a faster rate than I was crossing them off. I think one of the things people often say to me, how the hell did you do it? And I sleep well. I'm one of these lucky people who sleeps well. So
You're energised every day.
not that I should have relied on that, and clearly it wasn't enough, just getting a decent night's sleep. I do. I guess it's fairly obvious I'm an extrovert in that I get my energy from interacting with people, although in more recent years, I'm enjoying getting energy being alone. That's quite a transition for me, which I'm loving. Life was busy, but it was very rewarding. And again, I don't mean dollars there. I mean
helping people.
And the satisfaction, I guess, and the positive effects of that, the dopamine levels, offset the negative effects of the cortisol and the stress. I'm a biochemist by training. I think I managed to just sustain things until I couldn't.
Yep.
Yeah.
And now your businesses, you've taken a step back, you've brought things back down, I guess, to the fundamentals, what you enjoy the most. So what's working well right now?
Working well right now? Well, it's, to be honest, it's still really hard right now because I made that decision 18 months ago and we had a lot of design work still to complete. So I still have designers on my staff finishing off our final projects, but we are so close, like in the next month or so. So that's been hard because making the decision to downsize does come with a cost. I've still got the huge overheads of a large office space and the ongoing insurances and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I went into it eyes wide open, but it's winding up the old format is still hard. The new stuff, which is the old stuff, which is the helping people with our science services, only takes a small team, which is lovely.
Streamlined, low overheads.
Yeah, it will be once we move out of the office.
A lot of results.
Yeah. So, and getting back to doing more of the communication, I think I ran out of. I didn't have as much energy for the public education. And so I used to run workshops with the MBA and HIA, for example, but, I'd run out of energy to do that sort of stuff. I'm hoping that in this new format, I will have more space and energy to do more of that education and communication and advocacy work.
More podcasts.
Yeah, more podcasts or my own podcast. People keep saying do your own podcast.
So what does the future look like now?
Future looks good. While I've just harped on about the stuff that's still hard, the future does look bright from a personal perspective because I am putting my health first. I still am concerned about the industry and the environment and our climate and all the things we need to address, and well aware how hard it is for small business. So not rose-coloured glasses, that's for sure. But it looks good. I'll be around. I'm not in a position to retire, I can tell you.
Have you got any future goals that you're working towards?
I'm actually renovating my own apartment right now, having as well as downsizing the business. Just literally a week before I had my stroke, we moved from my 8-star house in Wright into an 18-year-old apartment in the city, which I'm renovating and retrofitting with lots of lovely salvage timber from Thor's.
Fantastic.
So it's really lovely to have that personal project because I have dedicated so much of my time to working on other people's projects. The last couple of years has been hard in that way because I've literally been living surrounded by cardboard boxes in chaos with half a kitchen. So that's lovely. But no, look, I think just... I'll fix it, chicks. Can I finish with a mention of fix it, chicks?
No, we're still going. We've got inspiring the next generation. We've got the quick fire round. We've got a bit of a wrap up.
Oh, beautiful.
If we could probably look through your Instagram quickly as well.
Yeah, totally.
Let's pull that up.
Yeah.
We'll do that and then we'll jump on to fix it, chicks.
It's me ranting angrily.
There's Is there any project in here you want to specifically pull out?
Actually, do you want to go back to down? That one there is kind of one where it started. So this is my old house in Curtin. So I left Canberra a couple of times. I came here as a postgrad student in 1993, but I left. I'd been living overseas and then in Western Australia, and we moved back to Canberra. I chose this house. It didn't look like this when I first chose it. It did have the Cape Cod extension. It faced north. It had really, really great potential. So that's all north facing. We moved in. This is the house where I had constant asthma and wheezing, and over summer the kids' bedrooms were upstairs. It would get to 37 degrees. They had to sleep in the south western bedroom downstairs. That same southwestern bedroom was a friggin' icebox over winter. Anyway, it was thermally disastrous. It's actually the worst house I've ever lived in, which was so fascinating because I chose it for its good bones and really poor use of space. So I actually... Jigsaw Housing, this was Jigsaw Housing's first major renovation project. So I teamed up with Tom and Andy to come up with a design that effectively turned this house into a family home that functioned much better in terms of thermal performance, but also in terms of living in. But it also had the ability to split into two apartments. So a ground floor apartment for me and my husband to live in long term, and an upstairs, which then we created the only extension was a little single garage with a rooftop garden. So the upstairs apartment had its own outdoor space in terms of this rooftop, and again was another 8-star apartment. So this was a case study in the federal government's Your Home Guide back in 2003. It's still there in the Your Home Guide online and won an award. But this really sums up these are the sorts of projects that I'm most interested in. So I've already talked about how I want to retrofit existing housing. In terms of addressing the housing crisis, there's so much potential in a lot of our existing big houses to turn them into 2 homes in one. So that's something Lighthouse has done quite a bit of, and I've written articles about for Sanctuary Magazine and for Renew.
That could be for an older couple that will say want to rent out a section of their
totally.
house.
Or acknowledge that their adult kids are not going to be able to move out for a long time.
Yeah. Or a younger couple that just moved into a house and want a bit more money. Yeah,
totally. Yeah. And we've had family groups do it, and others just do it for rental income. But it gives a huge amount of flexibility. And in terms of ageing in place, the older couple, again, might just have rental income, but in the future.
This is just using the stock that we've got to its to its best ability, right?
And there's so much potential there. And that's something I think ACT government and planning, and I've stressed this to them, need to get on board with regulations that actually make this easier and encourage it. At the moment, they make it very hard because these are not, from a planning perspective, are not two separate houses. We're just pretending it's one house when it's actually functioning as two.
I guess I can see where they're coming from a little bit. They don't want suburban slums.
Yes, absolutely.
So it has to be done well. It has to be,
yep.
You don't want 15 people living in one house. I'm sure everyone's in their suburbs got some house they drive past and there's 10 cars out the front.
Yeah, the student hovel. Yeah, we all know they exist. So yes, I agree it's a fine line, but I do think it's something we need to do more of.
We've got a finalist down here.
Which
I think I saw it.
Oh, the one to the left there.
This one?
That one there. That little house. This one was actually just in the Australian Financial Review. Talk about, getting to different audiences. I've actually had 2 stories in the Australian Financial Review, and they are not our typical audience. They're not typically environmentally concerned, and they're not the mainstream market that I typically want to cater to. But again, if you want to communicate and you want to have impact, you don't miss opportunities. So
you've got to be everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So they contacted me and I said, sure, I want to show you something different. So it's a 1960s house in Western, again, small extension, completely transformed in terms of thermal performance.
This is the little Eve you're probably talking about.
Yeah, so that's a little
it's working perfectly there.
It is working perfectly. Little pop-out window seat in that one at the front, and then we extended it by 19 square metres to completely transform it.
I think this is such an understated thing in every home. Every home needs that.
Totally. The entryway, the functional space.
The entryway with the little seat there. Because I'm just constantly, I've got my little kids putting their shoes on each day. You have to go into the lounge room. Their shoes are never in the lounge room. That's what you don't want them in there.
Yep. And I can tell you, I've had 3 hip replacements. That's a whole other story. But having somewhere to sit down to put your shoes on is so
very
important for young people and older people.
And a spot like this.
Yeah, window seats don't. So that's a 600 mil extension under the eave line of a house. This is what the AFR article was about. So this is the sort of thing I want people to think about, that you don't often have to create huge, big extra spaces. Just by putting that window seat in, they can now seat 5 extra people in that living area, and it has become such a social hub and such a beautiful spot to sit in the sun. And
a very easy extension to do.
Yeah.
I've actually done one of them similar to that.
They're great.
Yeah.
The old pop out under the eave. I encourage you to think about it, everybody. So projects like that I'm really proud of. So it was a feature article in Sanctuary magazine, but it was also a finalist. In fact, I think it's up for a gong in the HIA Awards, yet to be announced as well. It's a cracker. And I love sharing our plans too. So if you look back through our Instagram account, I always share our concept designs and usually the before and after plans, because I'm not...
That's not generally done.
No, I know. And it's, what have people got to worry about? Again, I think anything that encourages people. I can't work for everyone, but if we can help other people get there.
And this is
this one was a finalist and didn't win a gong this time. So 360 Building, we do a lot of collaboration with them. But again, fantastic. So it can now comfortably sleep 10 people. So both sets of grandparents come and live regularly, like for months.
That's going to be the way things are going to go, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're all going to move back to the multi-generational living, I think. This one in the middle that looks like the big shed, beautiful property. Caroline, the client, I'm up there on the balcony with, wanted to design a house that, again, can function beautifully as a family home, but, again, has absolutely been designed to split into 2 houses. Great.
That's just function and form.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a cracker. And, of course, all our homes are all electric and...
Big landscaping. I love that.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. We get the landscape plan done in our second stage. We say, again, we want you go and work with a landscape designer at this point. We will think about it.
It provides more value than you realise.
Oh, huge.
I'm really pushing my business.
I love it because it is a big part. All lighthouses have big outdoor areas.
We'll keep moving on, but this could go forever otherwise. Inspiring the next generation. We need to be smart. We need more smart and passionate people in this space. How do we make that happen?
Podcasts like this. Again, getting out, being willing to communicate. So if CIT does contact you and say, we've got an event with students, would you come and chat? Do it. The next generation need to see role models, and they need to hear from people. And again, the power of social media these days, I think young people are getting exposed to so much more than when we were young and in this industry. You had to send an email and wait for a reply from someone to learn anything if they bothered to reply. Now, communicate.
If there's someone thinking about, I guess following what you're doing and wanting to get into it, and say they don't want to go down the path of architecture, like how would they? Do you need a degree? Do you need all this stuff, or is it about learning and experience or working with the right people?
Combination. So you don't necessarily need a degree. There's a certificate in home energy assessment, so you can do through TAFE around the country. In terms of my science team, one has got an undergraduate degree in architecture, but then worked in the industry for a long time as a lighting specialist. So Keith, who's my right-hand man. And then Bronte, who's my other key staff member, has got a science degree, but her parents were early clients of ours, so she lived in a lighthouse, so she had this early experience.
Similar to you.
Yeah, and then she went and worked at CSIRO and went, this is not what I want to do, and she came around and had a cup of tea with me and a chat, and I told her about the certificate and in fact, I've had another staff member where this has happened. I've told them the path they can follow to get the qualifications to try and get in. But at the end of each conversation, I've actually just said, come and work for me and learn on the job.
Get a feel for it first.
Yeah.
And, dip your toe in.
Totally, yeah. So I think getting some industry experience is so valuable. Increasingly, you need the qualifications. So I'm not saying don't do the Cert 4. But if you did the Certificate 4 in home energy assessment, that is not going to teach you about what it's like to work in the industry and about the costs and the day-to-day challenges that are faced. So
what I'm really impressed with is that you've mentioned feasibility and cost and the money side of things.
Oh, I'm not shy about that.
And I feel like that is something that a lot of people are shy about talking about.
Very shy, yeah.
And they don't want to be, I guess, transparent on around the costs and things like that.
Yeah.
And, you're getting an energy efficient home, or we're looking at these things for you. So I think that's really important. And thinking about it now, it would provide a level of calmness to the client, knowing that you are thinking about the money side of it as well.
Absolutely. It was the first thing I started when I started collaborating with Andy and Tom, was collecting the cost data, because we needed to understand how much this stuff costs. So, I've got 15 years worth of costing data. I was one of the first people, again, on social media, not being shy about the enormous rise in costs. I flagged the 40% rise in construction costs before the ABS put those figures out, when the rest of the industry, I think understandably, was like, la, it's not happening. We can't tell our clients it's happening. And I thought, holy heck, we have to tell our clients it's happening. It's going to lead to a world of pain if we pretend this is not happening. So communication means not just communicating the good news stories, it means communicating the bad news as well. And people will respect that if you come from a place of honesty and just...
They'd rather know.
Much better to know.
You can make informed decisions.
Yeah, and I would tell people up front, you cannot afford this. You cannot do this project. And some of them might walk away and go and try with someone else, and anyway, and that often can be a disaster. But the majority of them, the ones that were going to be good clients anyway, took that on board and realised, okay, she knows what she's talking about. They've done it with lots of different projects. You've got actual data, and I guess that's the other thing that we were. You do lots of similar projects too, so your costing data is reliable. For a lot of architects, they're doing such different projects that the costs don't actually mean anything in terms of they can't help them cost the next one. I guess we had a sort of a niche, a type of product which enabled us to collect meaningful costing data. But don't be shy about communicating that stuff early.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the quick fire round.
Right.
Now, the quick fire round is never quick fire. Just say whatever comes to mind and talk me through what you're thinking. What's one tool or method you couldn't work without?
Science.
Science.
Yeah, and people forget that. You know, I get introduced as an architect all the time. The Australian Financial Review article describes me as a designer. It's like, no, I'm a scientist. So it's the science. Don't underestimate it. And it doesn't have to be rocket science. It's all pretty simple stuff.
And when you talk about science, you mean about, explain that to me.
I mean, back to the basics: insulation, air leakage. So it's not
The science of the actual structure working
Yes.
with its surroundings.
Yeah.
Right?
So the basic building physics, and by that you don't as the client have to understand all of that. But what I'm saying, and I'm not going to bore you to tears with the scientific theory, but trust that there is science involved, and there are people who understand it, and they do have expertise to help you to create a better home.
These are like the 1%ers or the 1% of the 1%ers, right?
Yeah, well, hopefully the 3% of the 3%.
Yeah. What's the biggest misconception about sustainable design or science-led building that you want to bust?
That it's ugly, and it costs a fortune. Neither of those things have to be true. Look at we've done 300 projects across Canberra now. There might be a couple that some people think are not to their aesthetic desires, so they might call them ugly, but they were all cost effective compared to, we looked at project homes in comparison to our projects, and we look at other architect designed sort of one-off homes, and we were much closer to the project home cost.
That's interesting.
Yeah. In fact, we were often the same. So, for example, my house, which is my old house, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom in Wright, you can see it online. There are webinars about it. I did tours of it. There's still lots of information. It's only 150 square metres, but it didn't feel pokey. It had the 3 lovely outdoor areas, great use of light, great storage, felt and functioned like a much larger home than people imagined. In my suburb, in Wright, there were plenty of 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom homes that were 220 square metres, and with a star rating at least 1 star, if not 2 stars lower. They typically cost the same as my house to build.
Right.
So you get the same functional space, you get running costs that are
smaller.
so much smaller, and you get a house that actually feels and functions and has beautiful outdoor areas and is actually much more sellable at the end.
Better use of the space.
Much better use of the space, yeah.
If you could fix one thing in the industry tomorrow, what would it be?
Approvals. I'll keep it at that.
we got to keep it at that. Every podcast that comes in, and I always,
Yep.
You'll find me right up.
Yeah.
We'll be here forever.
Yep.
What's the best advice you've ever received, Jenny?
Look, I think for a long time people were telling me to, fit my oxygen mask before assisting others, and I'll
get to it.
I'll get to it, yeah. So do listen to that, taken from this old bag who's learned the hard way, really pushed my health to the absolute limit. It's not sustainable, no. So look after yourself, and growth isn't. Growth in terms of business size is not the be-all and end-all at all.
What would you have done differently?
I wouldn't have grown. So at Jigsaw Housing, we made the mistake, I think, of growing to a team of 18 really quickly in a 4-year period, or less than 4 years. I think that was a mistake, and I think that's one of the reasons we sort of broke apart. Again, no regrets, because I think that splitting was a good thing. Lighthouse, when I started it, there were only 6 or 7 of us, and I said, no, I'm not going to grow beyond 10. Then I was at 12, and then I was at 14, and then I ended up at 17. So I shouldn't have done that. It would have been more sustainable. It would have delivered less projects, but it would have been more physically and financially sustainable to keep it smaller. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always hard to learn those lessons, isn't it?
Yeah, yep. But that's what life's about, hey?
That is what life's about.
Totally.
Yeah, we're always learning.
Yeah, and no big regrets. I'm not one to regret. It is, let's take that knowledge, share it, move forward.
Definitely. It's just looking back and going, maybe I should have made this decision.
Yeah.
But maybe we wouldn't be where we're at today.
Exactly.
So, you
Yeah.
know, it's always good, I think, to look back and I guess take stock of what we've learned or mistakes we've made and go,
That's right. And yeah, giving yourself time to reflect on what you have learned and the positives as well as, you know, because we brush over the big achievements.
Well, we do.
Yeah.
And the negatives seem to stand out like sore thumbs when we
yeah.
look back. And then when you actually really think about it, you're like, oh, no, well, I won this award and we did this and we delivered however many X, Y, and Z.
Yeah,
you know,
and we've got oodles of happy clients, even if there's one that's whinging about something, you know.
There's always the odd one.
Yeah.
There's always the odd one. What would you tell your younger self just starting out?
I think it'd be the growth thing. Don't get sucked into the growth. Not that I did badly, and again, not that I was ever driven by dollars, but yeah. Well, you know, it's funny. Here I am, a sustainability expert, and talking about sustainable housing, and I was so conscious of sustaining my staff, you know, morale and PD, and you know all those things. But yeah, what does that sustainable business actually look like, and what does a sustainable business owner look like?
That's true. What keeps you grounded outside of work and what are you doing for yourself?
These days, walking. I walk lots and I've discovered the absolute joy of walking on my own. So I mentioned before that I'm naturally very much been an extrovert who gets their energy from people. Now I love going, I mean like a 16-kilometre walk by myself. Big one. Yeah. I love getting out, and it doesn't even have to be out in the bush or a really remote hike, but I just love getting out. And people say to me, what do you do? Do you listen to music, do you listen to podcasts? And I go, no, actually I don't. I genuinely stop filling my head with extra stuff. I love music and I love podcasts, but getting out, giving yourself that time where you're not injecting extra stuff into your brain and just letting ideas percolate. That's where I've had my best ideas. It's where I've had my greatest revelations of, oh, what the hell have you been doing? Don't do that anymore. So, you know, and I know it's much harder. It's easier for me now because my kids are adults. So I can carve out that space quite easily. I've only got my partner and my dog to worry about, and often I'll take the dog with me. So I know it's harder for people who are in that peak busy time of life, but carving out some space for yourself. And gym, exercise, swimming, any of that sort of zen time where you can just let ideas float around.
Yeah. Fix It Chicks. I didn't mean to brush over that before, but tell me all about it. What is it? What is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So Fix It Chicks is a thing that, again, it's an Instagram account at the moment. Hopefully it will move to YouTube soon. We've got 55,000 followers on Instagram. It's me and my dear friend Lish Fayer, who I mentioned before, who's a former ABC radio journalist, still an ABC employee. She's the one who did the TV show Carbon Cops back in 2007, where I first saw her blow a door. Lish and I go way back. We both got science degrees. We both did postgraduate science communication. Anyway, we're science and energy nerds, energy efficiency nerds from way back, and always been good friends. Lish could see that I was frustrated with how expensive things were becoming and how hard it is to get to those vulnerable households. I wanted to help and to get to the women. She was a bit frustrated at work as well. So last February, we literally started it as a mental health strategy where we would sort of tag team and share ideas and things that might help women at home in their houses to improve their comfort.
I love that. That's sick.
And it's gone off. It's very authentic, it's just raw. Lish will edit some of hers. I just do straight one take to camera because I don't have time for editing.
Let's get it done.
We're not afraid to be silly, and it's not about drumming science into people's heads. We're both scientists and science communicators who understand that the best thing you can do if you want to help people is cut the science out. Just say, trust me, I know the science. This is the practical stuff you need to do. You don't need to understand the science. Yeah, that's right.
These all these little things, right?
Yeah, all the simple stuff. So it's absolutely back to basics, and it's having a profound impact. So our following has increased rapidly, and we get those gorgeous comments in the background from women saying things like, oh my God, my kids slept through the night for the first time ever. We no longer have condensation running down the inside of the bedroom window. Or I can't believe how much better the room feels because I've draft sealed the front door and the back door. Or, yeah, I've had someone check out the insulation. It turns out we've only got R1.5 up there and I'm saving up for R5 bats.
Just these little things you can do, right?
Totally. And it just is such a buzz to us to know that it's actually helping people. So the challenge for us is how do we actually turn that into something that's sustainable for us, because there's no income. We've had a few speaking gigs. We've done gigs in Sydney and down on the coast as well. So we are doing a few things. That's the kind of stuff. I want to do more of that education and advocacy work. Not all for free, I guess, moving forward, so to get a bit of an income stream. But Fix It Chicks, I encourage you all to check it out. We have...
We'll put a link in.
Yeah, do put
the
a link
bio
in.
somewhere for this. Yeah,
and we were, it was 94% female followers, but now we're starting to pick up more. I mean, it's still 88% women, I think, which was always our target audience. But now we're getting some guys following too, going, oh, actually, these chicks actually bloody well know what they're talking about. Turns out. What a surprise. Yeah.
Who deserves a spotlight or a shout out, or who should come on the podcast with me?
Oh, actually, I'm probably biased to some of my former staff. So, because you want ACT people. So first springs to mind neighbourhood architecture. So Brendan McGregor, who's one of the co-directors of Neighbourhood, is a former staff member of mine. And his business partner, Chris Clode, is another excellent architect. They are, as you can tell from their name, neighbourhood architecture, are quite serious about doing stuff that helps at the neighbourhood level, smaller, smarter. So I encourage people to check them out, and they know about the value of integrating science, so they'll often get
more of a personalised service, right?
Personalised service, and they know to get that EER or the energy modelling done early on their concept designs. But there are a few architects around town on that front. Sonda Architects is a two women led company. Claire and Wendy, also great. Oh gosh, see, I've started naming people and this is always dangerous. But I would start with those two in terms of architecture. In terms of construction, 360.
360,
yeah, 360 we've done a lot of work with. But as I said, we work with a range of builders. We would go out to tender. So there's about a pool of about 10 or 11 that we've used over the last 5-6 years, and we've learned something from all of them. But yeah, 360 would be the ones, that I would.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at season 2 at the moment.
Cool.
I think after this one I might have a little break.
Yes, fair enough.
And then
fix that oxygen
mask.
Fix
that oxygen mask. Yeah, and then I want to do I want to sit back and I guess carefully curate a list of guests for the second season and see what we can do there.
Yeah, I'll think of some other ones for you.
It's been really enjoyable this season, though.
You've had a great range of people.
Yeah. To wrap it up though, where can people find or connect with you, Jenny?
Cool. We've got a website which has got a section that we call, I think in classic architecture term, instead of calling it a blog from the start, the architects wanted to call it the journal area. But I've got a lot of resources and information and links to all of the webinars and podcasts and articles that I've done. So there's a whole heap of resources there, yeah. Yeah. So go and look at our website. But again, I know people these days crave content and video and snippets. So that's where I'd say head to Instagram. So Lighthouse has got quite a bit of stuff. Fix It Chicks has more of the video-based information. Yeah,
awesome.
Cool.
Now, can you give us your favourite quote to finish with?
Do you know what?
If we don't have one,
no.
just give us a motto.
I'm gonna really regret this. Maybe I'm just going to go with the fix your own oxygen mask before helping others. I think is the one that resonates for me at the moment. But I know there's going to be something else profound. Another one I've always used for years is, collaboration, not competition. In business, again, there's this idea that everything's a competition. There is plenty of work out there, most of the time, to go around, and there's a lot of benefit that comes from collaboration. You don't have to collaborate with everybody, but cooperate, collaborate, communicate, those three.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Cool.
Awesome. Look, thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure. It's been a great chat.
I've enjoyed every minute of it. We'll finish it up there. Awesome.
Thank you so much.